Salutations, I am once again a cat girl. There's been a lot of Final Fantasy raid drama lately. This is not another video following the Omega stuff, though I have to say I've thoroughly enjoyed all the funny posts we've gotten out of it. Instead, I want to talk a little bit about the underlying reasons for the drama and offer you one middling raider's perspective on the whole third-party tool debate. Square's official policy, reiterated by Yoshida in the recent letter he dropped, is that all third-party tools are illegal. If you are playing anything but a strictly vanilla game, you are in violation of the rules and can be punished at Square's whim. Of course, in practice, this isn't what we see, and not just for lack of game masters to hand out the punishments. The truth is, enforcing this policy is a semantics nightmare. In a much older interview, Yoshida took their policy to the logical extreme and asked if a calculator was an illegal tool. It is, after all, an outside instrument. You could say similar things about Discord. Is it an unfair third-party advantage to have voice chat while you raid? To have a raid caller? To watch a Hector lecture on a fight? These things are all third-party aids, but we can also be reasonable and say they're a step removed from the game, since they don't actually interact with it in any way. Well, what about VPNs? I know that some Australians play on EU or NA servers via a VPN, a third-party tool that does interact with the game and your routing to the servers, but the only advantage they get is not turbo lagging. It's pretty clearly ridiculous to say that living next to the server is cheating, so I'm hesitant to say that using a VPN like Mudfish or Exit Lag is cheating either. Likewise, NoClippy or XIV Alexander fall kind of under that same category too. They are tools not meant to give you an advantage as such, but to eliminate a disadvantage. Though, again, they technically all fall under a violation of the rules. And yes, of course, anything that directly alters your game, including cosmetic adjustments like bunny hat mods and or color filters like G-Shade, are all an offense too. But I don't point these things out to downplay the flagrant cheating that Team Unnamed committed so much as to make this point. A true all-or-nothing enforcement policy for third-party tools would not only be impractical, but economically devastating for Square. If they witch-hunted every person with mods, plugins, shaders, or VPNs, every data center would look like Dynamis. On the other hand, there is clearly a point on the plugin radicalization pipeline where you've gone too far. When your love for bunny hat mods turns into automating your rotation and having Cactbot announce every mechanic and how to solve it 15 seconds in advance, you have f***ed up. It's impossible to talk about plugins and raiding without talking about 14's biggest and oldest competitor, World of Warcraft. I'm sure many of you watching this are WoW expats, and you probably remember, and not very fondly, the arms race between mods and fight design that so plagued that game. When I first came over to 14, I was ecstatic about getting to leave behind dumb tools like DBM and just getting to play the game and learn it as it is. Having mandatory plugins like weak auras is so wildly unfun for new players who just want to jump into content without spending hours fiddling with their UI or setting stuff up. It's an unnecessary barrier to entry and hassle that exists only off of momentum. The devs know people will have these tools, so they design fights that screw those tools up or still somehow provide a challenge, meaning more people have to have these tools in order to not be at an almost insurmountable disadvantage. This is not where I want to see 14 go, and yet it seems like we're already on the treadmill. Sadly, I think it's impossible to touch on this topic without making some enemies, as people generally feel very strongly about plugins one way or the other. For one, I've seen a very large uptick in plugin-reliant raiders over the years, and I personally really dislike raiding with people who need stuff like Cactbot. They've really arrested their own sense of development and are a nuisance to raid with on patch days when stuff breaks. I have actually left Statics because of Cactbot's presence. It's an annoying thing to deal with. On the other hand, I firmly believe that some tools are good, perhaps even necessary to growth, including the #1 most wanted fugitive itself, ACT. People will not ever agree on whether this tool is good or evil, and I've seen arguments for and against it in my comment section and in the wild. I have a very strong belief that it's for self-improvement, because I like getting better at the game, and ACT offers an easy way to quantify and track that. I've also personally not seen it used for any crazy toxicity, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, of course. I know some of you have shared some horror stories of ACT discrimination, but again, speaking as a raider, you don't really need a parser to be toxic. If you know a fight well enough, you can just kind of tell when a group's damage is low. The boss will be at a higher health than normal when you reach certain parts of the fight, and you can then just look at your party list and see who's unusually low on aggro. If the samurai is generating less enmity than the bard, you pretty much know what's happening without needing any third-party help. And honestly, I'm not sure how problematic this all even is. I mean, if you're hard flaming someone in a level 50 dungeon because they aren't playing optimally, you're clearly and ridiculously in the wrong. On the other end of the spectrum, if you have a respectful and serious sit down with someone in a savage raid because they're not putting in the time to improve that others are, and it's causing progression issues, that's just life. Why is it okay for one person to sabotage 7 other people's fun because they don't want to get better at the game? ACT and tools like FF logs and XIV analysis get a lot of hate as toxicity enablers, but they are just tools. That means they can be used both responsibly and irresponsibly. It isn't toxic gatekeeping for a hardcore Week 1 raid team to snoop through your logs prior to tryouts. They know what they want, and they're making sure you won't waste each other's time. It's really not that different from an employer expecting a university degree or reasonable prior work experience. They want to make sure they're getting a good fit for their company, or in this case, raid team. The point is, while Square may not recognize a gray area, we as a community clearly do. For every hardliner mass reporting ACT or shaders, there are 100 people with cosmetic mods minding their own business and 25 with some sort of raid plugin. The plugins are not going anywhere, no matter the stance that Square takes. They simply can't enforce their policy on the scale that would be required to uproot plugins, which are absolutely prolific and, for better or worse, only getting more popular. As a final callback to Yoshida's letter, he mentioned the possibility of an official world-first race for the next Ultimate, which would presumably mean all participants had to stream and prove they weren't using any plugins if they wanted to be considered a legitimate contender for World First. Is this a solution? I don't know. This is a genuine dilemma in the sense that there aren't really any obvious right answers. What do you think? Will Square someday capitulate and just allow plugins? The inability for console players to have them makes me think no, but there's also been many instances of popular plugins getting turned into official parts of the game, such as the new party buff timers we just got that Square banned people for in the last Ultimate, DSR. Simultaneously though, we can't and won't get rid of all of them, so what's to be done? Thanks for enduring my rant, and as always, your family's well-being hinges on your subscription to me.